Okay, hey guys, welcome back. We are going to continue our discussion of vertebrates that we started in the previous video. All right, let's just review a few things from the previous video about vertebrates. Okay, well, first of all, vertebrates are animals with backbones. And these are the animals that you guys would most commonly recognize as being animals. If I asked you to name animals for me, these would be the ones that you guys would name for me. Okay? However, vertebrates are just actually a small portion of the animal kingdom, if you remember from talking about the 8 different phylums of invertebrates that we have. However, just to kind of review from the last video, vertebrates they are members of the phylum Chordata. All right, and chordates are the animals that that means cord. Okay, chordate, cord. They have notochord, they have a hollow dorsal nerve cord, pharyngeal pouches, and tails that all exist in the embryo stage of their life cycle. Okay, and most chordates are vertebrates, but there are those two invertebrate chordates, which are the tunicates and the lanceolets. All right, today we're going to start talking about the vertebrate chordates, okay, which are the ones that have the backbones. All right, if you remember, vertebrates have an endoskeleton, which is a skeleton located inside the body that's composed of both bone and or cartilage. Okay, and I say and or cartilage because the majority of vertebrates, their skeletons are composed of both, but there are a couple of vertebrates that their skeletons are solely cartilage, and those are actually two of the classes that we're going to be looking at today. All right? Now, there are 5 major classes of vertebrates. Actually, it's 7 major classes of vertebrates. Okay, so we can say 5 groups of vertebrates. And the first one are fish. Okay, and fish actually have 3 separate classes depending on the type of fish that there are. All right, but what makes a fish a fish? All right, first of all 3 classes of fish have many of these exact same characteristics. So we're going to look at that first. All right, first of all, fish are the oldest and most common vertebrates on Earth. All right, if you remember, like 75% of the Earth is covered in water. Fish live in water. So therefore, that's what makes them the most common type of vertebrate. Okay? Fish are characterized by the fact that they have scales, fins, and pharyngeal gills. If you remember, again, the chordate characteristic is that all embryos of chordates have pharyngeal gill slits, which close up after a while for most of them. However, for fish, these gills stay intact because this is how they respire in the water. Fish are carnivores, they're herbivores, they're parasites, they're filter feeders, etc. And it all depends upon the species. Most fish are not omnivores. They're either carnivores, which means they eat other fish, or they're herbivores, they eat the aquatic plant life. Okay, fish do reproduce sexually through internal or external fertilization, and it depends upon the species of fish. So for some species of fish, the male will deposit the sperm directly into the female, which is the internal fertilization, and for many species of fish, the female will lay the eggs, and then the male comes and sprays their sperm on the egg, which then fertilizes the eggs, and that is an external form of fertilization. All right, now here's a new term, something we haven't talked about yet. Fish are ectothermic. And ectothermic means that fish are cold-blooded. A cold-blooded creature has the ability to change their body temperature to match their surroundings. Okay, we are warm-blooded as mammals. We cannot change our body temperature. We have a constant body temperature. Cold-blooded organisms or ectothermic organisms, such as fish, their body temperature fluctuates. It changes to match that of their surroundings. Okay? And also fish have complete organ systems. Okay? They have the same types of organ systems that we have as mammals, as humans, human mammals. They have complete digestive systems, they have complete nervous systems, respiratory systems, reproductive systems, excretory systems, etc. Okay, now the first type of fish that you have, or the first class of fish, is class Agnatha, and these are the jawless fish. Well, what do you think it is that they're missing? Correct, they have no jaws. All right, hence the name the jawless fish. All right, these were the first vertebrates to evolve. All right, these are ones, they have modified fins, but they swim with snake-like motions. They kind of resemble eels, but they're not eels, okay? They are a particular type of fish, all right, that look like a snake or an eel. They use gills for respiration, as do all fish. And their skeleton is made entirely of cartilage. I said, vertebrates have those endoskeletons that are composed of both bone and or cartilage. And I said and or because there are two classes of fish, or excuse me, two classes of vertebrates that have endoskeletons completely made of cartilage, and this is one of them. Their cartilage does not harden into bone. They have no jaw, all right? Hence the name jawless fish. What they have are sucker-like discs with razor-sharp tongues, and I'm going to show you a picture of that in just a second. These fish are parasitic. They feed on the blood and the tissues of other fish, okay? And again, I'll explain this when I show you the pictures of their mouths. And of course, these do have complete body systems, which all fish species have complete body systems. Now, there's two particular types of jawless fish that we have, and these are called the lampreys and the hagfish. All right, now remember, these are parasitic. They feed on blood and tissues of other fish. All right, here is an example. You can see the hagfish and the lamprey. All right, the hagfish is the one that's on top, and they have tentacles like around their mouth. All right, how hagfish survive is they will actually enter through like the mouth of the fish that they are going to feed upon, and they literally will eat the fish from the inside out. They will actually go into the fish and eat the internal organs and stuff first, and then burrow their way out. On the bottom, you have the lampreys, okay? Now, the lampreys, you see, they don't have tentacles around their mouth. Their mouth is actually the one that's discussed up top, where they have sucker-like discs with a razor-sharp tongue. And this is what that looks like. And that's what the mouth of a lamprey looks like. All right, it's a sucker type of a disc. And you can see it's lined with rows and rows of sharp teeth. And they have a razor-sharp tongue. And because they are parasitic, what they do is they will actually suction on to the outside of a fish. And then they will take their laser-sharp tongue and slice that fish open. And then they start to literally suck the insides of the fish out. And that is how they feed. All right, pretty neat, huh? Okay, the second class of fish that we have is class Osteichthyes, and these are the bony fish. Now, these are the fish that you would recognize as being fish. Okay, this makes up 90% of all the fish species that you have. This is your trout, your salmon, your goldfish, your pikes, okay, all the ones that you would normally recognize as being fish. And in this case, they're called bony fish because their bones harden from cartilage. All right, so when they're small, when they hatch out of the egg, it's mostly cartilage. And then as they grow, all right, and their endoskeleton grows with them, the cartilage does harden into bone. Now, they are carnivorous, okay? They use gills for respiration. Okay, fish, believe it or not, do have color vision. All right, however, how most fish see is it's really kind of neat. They can see on both sides of their body because their eyes literally lay on both sides of their body. There's one on the right side and there's one on the left side. And so they can see in both directions, all right? Whereas, there are some species of fish that have their eyes together in the front or on the top of their head, in which case they're only seeing in one direction, but most fish have eyes on both sides of their heads. Okay, now their scales, all right, are really kind of neat. They overlap like roof shingles. All right, and the reason why they do that is it protects the body, protects the internal organs. It prevents water from entering or leaving. Believe it or not, too much water can enter into a fish. That will be bad. And then, of course, if too much water left a fish, since they live in the water, that would be bad as well. All right, and the scales, it's covered with mucus, which are secreted by glands underneath the scales. And they're covered with this slimy mucus, which makes it easy for them to escape. It also protects their bodies, and it enables smooth movement through the water. Now, fish have something called a swim bladder, which is a gas-filled sac that gives buoyancy, what enables fish to float in every different depth of the water. Okay, as they swim from different depths, from shallow water into deeper water, this swim bladder will adjust to enable for them to float in that water, be able to swim in that water. Okay. Now, the fins that they have, okay, are used for movement, and they have 4 different types of fins. Okay, they have dorsal fins, which are the ones that are along their back. They have caudal fins, which are their tail fins. And they have anal fins, which are on the back end of the fish by the tail. Okay? These 3 types of fins enable for straight line motion. Okay? The dorsal fins, the caudal fins, and the anal fins work together to allow fish to move in a straight line. Okay? Then their other type of, the last type of fin that they have is the pectoral fins. And those are the fins that are along the sides. Those fins help these fish balance and move forward in the water. So the dorsal fins, the caudal fins, and the anal fins work together to enable fish to move in a straight line motion, where the pectoral fins, the ones along the side, help them balance and move forward. And those are the ones that you often see, like if you look at fish swimming, they're the ones that are off to the sides, and you see them moving, kind of like suspending them there in the water. All right? Now, here you can see the internal anatomy of an example of a bony fish, and you can see that they have the different organ systems like we have. They have a heart. They do have a closed circulatory system, because you can see extending from the heart. They have blood vessels that move their blood through the body. They have a digestive system with stomach and intestines. All right, they have a gallbladder, just like we have. They have a liver, like we have. They have a brain. Okay, they do have a skull. You can see the bones, and the spinal cord is there inside what would be like their vertebral column. They have kidneys, okay? And then you can see the swim bladder is that big white structure there in the middle of the fish. And that is what fills up and deflates in order for them to be able to float in any depth of water. All right, they do have their gonads, which would be the ovaries or the testes, so they have their reproductive organs. And they do have an anus, which is at the end of the intestines, all right, which is what they use in which to excrete wastes. Okay? Now, the last type of fish or class of fish that you have is class Chondrichthyes, and these are the cartilage fish. Okay, now again, remember I said there are 2 types of vertebrates that have, or 2 classes of vertebrates. Their skeleton, their endoskeleton, is composed entirely of cartilage, and the cartilage does not harden into bone. The first one was the jawless fish. The second one here is the cartilage fish. Now, what's the difference between the 2? The presence of a jaw. Jawless fish have no jaw. Cartilage fish, however, are known for their jaws, because the cartilage fish is your sharks and your stingrays. Okay, so the sharks and the rays are the types of cartilage fish. All right, so again, if perhaps I would ask you on a test, hint, what's the difference between a jawless fish and a cartilage fish? You would tell me a jaw. All right, if I would ask you what's the same between a cartilage fish and a jawless fish, you would tell me an endoskeleton made entirely of cartilage. All right, now, cartilage fish are solely carnivores. They are predators, all right? And I'm sure you've heard stories about shark attacks and things like that, okay? They are predators. Their skeleton is made entirely of cartilage, as we said. However, they have very powerful jaws with many rows of teeth. Okay, and I think I've told you guys in class before that I love going to the beach. However, I don't spend a whole lot of time in the ocean because I know what's in the ocean, and I've probably seen all the Jaws movies one too many times. Henceforth, I have spent a lot of time studying sharks in my life because they do fascinate me, but at the same time they terrify me. Okay? Cartilage fish reproduce sexually with internal fertilization. So the males do deposit the sperm directly inside the female, and then the females will lay eggs. Okay, now, once the baby sharks or the baby rays hatch from their eggs, they're not cared for. They're kind of on their own, all right, which is the same for all other fish species as well. There is no caring for the offspring that goes on. Okay, these organisms, the sharks and rays, do not have a swim bladder, okay, which makes them a little different from the bony fish. And they have very sharp scales, okay? Even though it looks like, if you think about a picture, like if you think about a shark and you think about a stingray, it doesn't look like they have scales. You know, like when you think of the scales on a fish, right, those are usually pretty indicative of being a fish. They do have they do have scales, these guys, but they're very, very sharp, and they kind of like almost blend into one another, you know? If you petted, which I don't know why you would want to, but if you petted a shark or a ray, and you moved in one direction, going from the head down to the tail, they're very smooth. But if you would try to come back in the opposite direction, like pet them going the wrong way, from the tail to their head, you could actually slice your hand open because their scales are so sharp. Right, now these guys have two sets of paired fins, and these are very indicative, again, especially of the sharks. All right, they have the pectoral pair, which is in the front, and then they have the pelvic pair, which of course is in the back. Okay, these allow for up and down movement and turning. All right, and they also have very large tail fins, all right, which propel them, through the water. The tail fins are very strong. Their tails are very strong, and they whip them back and forth, and that's what enables them to move through the water very quickly. Okay, and sharks have three very well-developed senses that they use to capture prey. They have an acute sense of smell. You may have heard that, you know, one drop of blood in the water will attract sharks for miles around, and that is actually true. All right, they can sense blood in the water. All right, they have the ability to sense electric currents in the water, which is caused by muscle movements of smaller fish. All right, which is kind of neat. So when smaller fish are swimming by, their muscle movements actually send like an electric current through the water that the sharks are able to pick up as they're swimming. Okay, and then they have what is called a lateral line system, and this is a system of pressure-sensitive cells, and that helps sense pressure changes in the water, which also helps them to find food. And pressure changes occur when prey swim by. Okay, and there you can see an example of a shark, and of course, that big fin on the back, on its back, are well, that's just very indicative of a shark. I apologize. I can't find the word that I'm looking for. That's the dorsal fin, The large dorsal fin on the back of the shark there, that is what really indicates a shark, and that's what you see coming up out of the water when a shark is going after a prey. A lot of times, however, sharks come up from underneath. Okay, so you see the pectoral fin, the dorsal fin, as it comes up out of the water, and then a lot of times it disappears, and that's because they dive down, and then they come up underneath their prey with their jaws open, and that's how they catch them. All right, and then on the right-hand side of the slide there is you see the stingray. All right, that's an example of a stingray. Some of those can get very, very, very large, where they can actually have, it almost looks like they have wings, and they do jump up out of the water. It almost kind of looks like they fly. And so some of the different species of stingrays can have a wingspan of, up to like 15 feet. Some of the large stingrays that live down in the warmer waters, like in the Gulf of Mexico. Okay? All right, and that concludes our discussion of fish. All right, so remember we have 3 different types of fish. You have your jawless fish, your bony fish, and your cartilage fish. All right? And now in the next video, we're going to talk about amphibians, which are land-dwelling creatures that actually evolved from the fish. And then we're going to talk about reptiles, which again are land-dwelling creatures that evolved from the amphibians. So that's it for today, folks. Have a great day.